Okay, let's just jump into this.
Yeah.
Imagine you wake up one morning and a new law has judged you.
Right.
Not for anything you've done, not for what you believe, but just based on who your grandparents were.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just random prejudice. This is the government stepping in and changing who you are legally.
That's precisely it. That's the core of what happened in 1935 with the Nuremberg Laws.
So this was a turning point.
A huge turning point. Because, before this, persecution could be really messy. It was often random. It depended on who the local official was.
Right, sporadic.
Exactly. These laws took all of that discrimination off the streets and put it directly into the law books. It created a legal system for defining people by race.
So it turned scattered hatred into, well, a systematic government policy almost overnight.
And it was all announced in the city of Nuremberg during this massive Nazi Party rally.
Okay, so our goal here is to really understand these two main laws, how they used ancestry to define someone's entire identity, and what that meant for daily life, the immediate impact.
To get the full picture, you really have to look at the two laws together. They were designed to work in tandem.
How so?
Well, one basically stripped you of your political existence, and the other one took control of your most personal life.
Okay, so let's start with the political part. That would be the Reich Citizenship Law.
Correct.
Before this law, citizenship was, well, it was more inclusive generally, but this new law created this huge immediate gap.
It did. It split people into two categories: a subject of the state and a full citizen of the Reich.
And the deciding factor was blood.
Purely genetics. The law said only people of German or related blood could be full citizens, and only full citizens had political rights.
Things like voting or holding a public office, things we just assume are part of being a citizen.
Exactly. So with the stroke of a pen, Jewish people were legally downgraded. They lost their citizenship and became just subjects.
So what did that mean, practically speaking? What was the immediate cost of being a subject?
The cost was enormous. If you were a lawyer, a teacher, a civil servant, which also included, police officers, railway workers, you lost your job instantly.
Just like that.
Just like that, because your job depended on you being a full citizen. So you have thousands of educated professional families who suddenly have no income just because of this new legal definition.
So the first law deals with your public life. The second one you said was more personal.
It went right into the home. It was called the Law for the Protection of German Blood and German Honor.
And the stated goal of that one?
The main focus was preserving what they called the purity of the German nation. The logic was that if you could stop people from mixing, you could maintain this artificial idea of racial purity.
So it made marriages between Jews and non-Jews illegal.
It made marriages and any physical relationships between Jewish people and people of German blood a crime, a serious crime, punishable by imprisonment or hard labor.
And it went even deeper than that. There was a really specific rule about who could work in the home.
Yes, this one is. It's startling. Jewish households were banned from employing any female domestic workers of German blood who were under the age of 45.
Under 45? Why that specific age?
It was deliberately chosen. The Nazis considered those the childbearing years, and the rule was meant to eliminate any possibility of a romantic or sexual relationship between a Jewish employer and a German employee.
Wow.
It shows how obsessed the state was with controlling every single personal interaction to stop any blurring of the racial lines.
So when you put the two laws together, it's total control, public and private.
Complete control.
Okay, so for these laws to work, the government had to define exactly who was Jewish, and this is where it becomes just terrifyingly bureaucratic.
It is. The entire system was based on biology, specifically on who your grandparents were.
And that's the part that is so cool. It wasn't about your faith.
No, not at all. Your religious practice didn't matter. A person was legally defined as Jewish if they had 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents.
Even if you'd been baptized a Christian your whole life.
Even if you went to church every Sunday, your identity was fixed by your ancestry. Your faith couldn't save you.
What about people with mixed ancestry?
They had a specific category for that. If you had 1 or 2 Jewish grandparents, you were classified as a Mischling.
Which means?
It translates to something like mixed race person or person of mixed heritage. And even that classification was incredibly complex. Some Mischling were allowed to serve in the military at first, but then they were kicked out later.
So it created even more uncertainty. And for all this, the state needed proof. You had to prove your own lineage.
Yes. Imagine the administrative nightmare. People were scrambling, digging through old church records, synagogue archives, trying to find birth and marriage certificates for generations back.
Just to satisfy the state's definitions.
Right. And this focus on biology, on something you couldn't change, made it impossible to escape. You couldn't just change your religion or move to a new city. Your identity was fixed.
And once that identity was fixed, the day-to-day impact, it must have been devastating.
It was immediate. We talked about the civil service jobs, but it hit other professions hard, too. Doctors and lawyers found their work severely restricted.
How so?
A Jewish lawyer could pretty much only have Jewish clients. A Jewish doctor could only treat Jewish patients. It cut them off from the wider economy and society.
This hostility, it didn't just stay in the workplace, did it? It spilled out into everywhere.
Absolutely. The laws gave the legal backing, and then local officials and, the public just ran with it. Suddenly, signs started appearing everywhere.
Banning Jewish people from
parks, from libraries, from theaters, from public swimming pools. It was about public shaming, total isolation.
And that affects the most basic things, like buying food.
That's the horror of it. It wasn't every single shop, not right away, but boycotts and shops refusing service became common.
So just getting groceries becomes a source of anxiety.
A daily struggle. You might have to try 3 different places just to get what you need because the first 2 turned you away.
At the same time, there was a huge economic attack happening.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Aryanization.
Aryanization was basically state-sanctioned theft. Jewish-owned businesses were forced to sell to non-Jewish or Aryan buyers.
And not for a fair price.
Not even close. They were sold for fractions of their actual worth. The goal was to wipe out Jewish influence in the German economy and transfer all that wealth. It left families completely impoverished.
So you lose your job, you lose your family business.
Yeah.
All financial security is just gone.
And to manage all of this, the government needed ways to track everyone.
Right, the administrative side.
This is where bureaucracy becomes a tool of dehumanization. The state made all Jewish people carry special identity cards, marked so any official could identify them instantly.
And then came the mandatory name changes in 1938.
Yes, that was a chilling step. A law was passed that forced all Jewish women to add the name Sarah to their legal names, and all Jewish men had to add the name Israel.
Think about that. Being forced to change your own name to mark you as inferior.
It made it impossible to blend in, instant identification.
And if you tried to leave the country, to immigrate.
They marked your passport. A big red letter J for Jew was stamped right on it, so any official at any border in the world would know immediately.
So this isolation, it naturally creates a refugee crisis.
Yeah.
People knew they had no future there.
And they tried desperately to leave, but it was made incredibly difficult.
Ah.
You needed special permits, for one, and before you could go, the government would seize a huge chunk of your property and your money, sometimes up to 90%.
So they were essentially taxing you for the privilege of escaping.
Exactly.
And when they finally got to a border, was the world waiting with open arms?
Sadly, no. And that's one of the great tragedies of this period. Most countries, including the United States and Great Britain, had very strict immigration quotas.
So they were turned away.
Many were. It split family apart. Parents would send their children ahead on their own, just hoping they could follow later, but often they couldn't get in.
So the laws isolated them inside Germany, and international policy isolated them from the outside.
It was a trap.
And to make sure this system continued, the next generation had to be taught to believe in it.
Right. The education system became a key tool for indoctrination. School textbooks were totally rewritten to push racial theory.
Teachers actually had to justify the laws in class?
They were required to.
Yeah.
They had to explain to students why their Jewish classmates were being removed and why it was, necessary for Germany.
And this went beyond just social studies, didn't it? It seeped into science classes.
It did. You had science classes where students would do things like measure skull sizes or check eye color, all to demonstrate the regime's pseudoscientific racial categories.
It normalizes it.
It teaches a whole generation to accept this kind of discrimination as fact.
And with all these laws and administrative structures in place, it laid the groundwork for violence.
That's the next step. In November 1938, things shifted from legal exclusion to coordinated physical attacks. We're talking about Kristallnacht.
The night of broken glass.
It was a massive escalation. Across Germany, thousands of Jewish-owned shops were smashed. Synagogues were set on fire. And this was not a random riot. It was coordinated by the state.
And the police and fire departments, they just stood by.
That's one of the most shocking parts. They were often given direct orders not to intervene unless a non-Jewish person's property was threatened. They literally stood and watched as synagogues burned to the ground. Then, after all that, thousands of Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps.
And to add insult to injury, the Jewish community was forced to pay a fine.
A massive collective fine. They were forced to pay for the damages that had just been inflicted on them.
So what was the world saying about all this?
Well, the foreign press, especially in the US and Britain, was shocked. There were reports, there were calls for boycotts of German goods.
But did governments do anything?
Not really. There were diplomatic complaints, but most governments were very reluctant to intervene. They saw it as an internal affair, and that lack of a strong international response just encouraged the regime to keep going.
But even in that darkness, there were people who pushed back.
We have to remember that. There were non-Jewish Germans who risked their lives to hide their friends and neighbors. There were secret networks trying to help people escape, and Jewish organizations themselves worked tirelessly to provide support, legal aid, even set up secret schools.
And after the war, these laws were obviously abolished.
Immediately. They were declared illegal, and the people responsible were tried for crimes against humanity. That's why we study them today.
Now the warning.
A powerful warning. It shows how prejudice, when it gets written into law and enforced by a government, can just dismantle a society piece by piece. The path to violence is often paved with bureaucratic rules.
That's the really chilling takeaway. You think about those seemingly small administrative things, forcing someone to add the name Sarah or Israel or stamping a red J on a passport. Those little steps are what strip away dignity. They make it easier for other people to look away and for the world to ignore what comes next. It forces us to question any law that tries to define who is and isn't a person with rights.
It's a critical lesson in how legality itself can become a weapon.
A very tough but absolutely essential thing to understand. See you next time.